a problem. I'm going to go to my own YouTube channel. Let's see. Again, like last week, another technical goof, making me cranky. It says I'm live. Oh, it just created a new link. Ah, well, that's no fun. Come on, YouTube. Well, apologies anyone watching on Periscope. Okay, take two. So yeah, that Poco phone, again, just super frustrated because you're not even not reviewing a phone by its own merits, but you're ignoring what it is that this phone is trying to accomplish. When you say, oh, it feels cheap feeling, you're like, it's made out of Kevlar. That's actually a pretty premium synthetic fiber. So that was Aditya, I didn't make an oopsie. YouTube got in my way. Again, anytime there's a problem with the stream, 99% of the time, it's going to be YouTube, not yours truly. Okay, so the, Renato, for a second, I was swearing on T-Mobile. Darn you, T-Mobile! And maybe they were throttling you like Verizon, because, we're going to be talking about that later on today. From Savanazon, we are going to be talking about Fortnite. We are going to be talking about Huawei's continuing woes in the telecommunications space. We're definitely going to be talking about some of the net neutrality news over the last week. I wanted to kick off, a little bit of housekeeping. I am having a super proud of me moment. This video took forever, but it is finally done. I have finally finished the P20 camera review. The P20 Pro, probably the most, without hyperbole, the P20 Pro is probably the most important thing to happen to smartphone cameras in 2018. So it's only right that I spend 20 minutes and 21 seconds talking about one of the most important developments in smartphone photography of the year. So, those of you on my Patreon, this video is now live. I did like a little early access over the evening because I wanted to see where we were at with the render and the edit, and I just wanted to make sure everything was clean. I already see comments from Walt, from Cheryl, from Renato. So this is good to go. This is live. This is the real deal. It's finally here. I'm so stoked to finally be talking about a large camera sensor on a smartphone. So the full analysis is in there. I'm thinking what I might do is just cut up a little bit of the conclusion and then post that as a separate public video. I don't know. Tell me if you guys think that would be too obnoxious or just obnoxious enough to share some of my thoughts on this camera, because Huawei wouldn't send me one. Huawei didn't have one for me, and it took me a long time to get my hands on one, many thanks to TK Bay, because we are basically done now with our Huawei P20 Pro versus LG G7 showdown. So TK is traveling, I believe, and I finally have this beauty back in my office, the LG G7, and I'm so happy to have this phone home. It was one of those things where I really wanted to spend time with the P20 Pro. I really wanted to play with that camera. I was very surprised by how much I missed my G7 while it was in TK's hands. So I'm going to do a little just sort of wrap up video. We each did hour-long podcasty conversation interview videos, and then I want to just do a welcome home G7 video, and maybe I'll have that out the end of this week, maybe next week, something like that. So from LGH Dotma, why not promote your Patreon stuff on YouTube? I think that's probably a good idea. It's more, I just want to find that happy balance. I don't want to just spam people with videos they can't watch on YouTube, so I'm trying to find ways. If you haven't seen one of my more recent camera reviews, I've started putting a TLDR conclusion at the top of the video, and then I'll go on with like 18 minutes of photo samples, video samples, analysis, discussion on the camera app, the UI, performance, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So I think what I might do is cut up just a little mini, like maybe a 1 minute cut on the conclusion, and then put that up there. So then it's still like I'm sharing my thoughts on it, it's not just, hey, I've got this camera review up, you should watch it on the Patreon, because I think we already are bombarded by enough, we have enough issues with ads in our general sphere of influence. So, let's see. Couple questions here in the live chat from Rajan. Poco will rock in a major hit in India, I'm sure. Even I'm not happy about polycarbonate, but it's still worth the money. Polycarb, so much better than glass. IMO. I think it feels nicer in the hand. I think it ages better over time. It makes the phone more durable. And if you can afford to front for, because isn't there a price difference on the Kevlar version? Then it's going to be an even more durable phone. Again, you're going to be paying the equivalent of around $300 US for a phone that is remarkably more durable without a case, probably even with a case, than a $1,000 Galaxy Note 9, right? So we need to stop acting, I mean, this isn't to pick on you, Razan, but we need to stop acting like the feel of glass in your hand denotes premium, because it's a terribly impractical material to make a phone out of. Apparently, I'm going through puberty again this morning. From Giorgio, are you still working for Pocket now? I haven't seen you on there in a while. So, Giorgio, I left several months ago. I officially left the podcast. I want to say it's almost 3 months ago now, 2 months and change. And I keep flirting with the idea of doing some kind of why I left Pocket Now video, some kind of editorial or commentary on my experiences there. There was a part of it, because I had spent 2 years writing and shooting video for Pocket Now, I didn't want anything in my departure to feel overly YouTube drama filled, because I still have this on my resume and I still want to point to this as being an outlet that I did good work at. And when people go to see, like, oh, where does this guy come from? He used to be at Pocket Now. What's that? And they go there and they check out the channel. I didn't want any potential drama to hit Pocket Now. So now that they're starting to get their strategy back in place, I think they got bought out by XDA. That was also something I couldn't talk about. They were trying to make that move while I was making my departure. And they have it seems like they've got a good host for their podcast with Josh Vergara. I feel like they're in a better position for me to say, hey, so this is why I left. When not making anything that I say feel like some douchey, like me pooping on what they do. So that's, I don't know. I have real videos to make. If you guys think that would be an entertaining or, a valuable video, then I'll put it together. From Lover of Tech, congrats with breaking 70,000 subs. Thank you. Again, YouTube has not been making it easy on us content creators of late. And, any of those milestones feels pretty good, man. Feels good. I like it. From Aditya Anil, Juan, could you please release a shorter, brief summary video of the P20 Pro review for non-Patreons? Okay, I'll see if I can do sort of a mini cut of the P20 Pro review. From Ayush Pandey, isn't OnePlus's product release cycle too short for consumers' mental horizon? I don't think so. This is another video that I'm going to be shooting this week. The video is going to be how would you improve on the OnePlus 6? Obviously, we know some of the things that are going to be coming out on the OnePlus 6T. But I think this is actually the right strategy for a boutique-y brand, is you only have one product. And when things improve from the beginning of the year to the end of the year, then you just improve that product. That way, whenever a customer buys a OnePlus, they're buying the best possible version of what that company can put out. I want to give consumers credit that they can understand that distinction. And at least in a 1 year to 1 year update, usually it's minor improvements, not a radically different phone. Especially the OnePlus 6 to the 6T. It's not like the 6T is going to get a Qualcomm 855 or some next-gen chipset, or it's going to have 12 gigabytes of RAM. It's going to be a minor improvement over the 6. Probably mostly aesthetic. Maybe they'll add some wireless charging or something like that. I think this is probably the better way to go if you're a company that's going to build its entire product rep around one phone at a time. Lover of Tech, I hate glass phones even with wireless charging. And you don't need glass back. to wireless charge. From Siobhan, polycarbonate equals plastic. No, it doesn't. An injection molded polycarbonate back is totally different than the flimsy, gross, sticky plastic that used to be on the back of a Galaxy S3. If you were to pick up a Lumia 830, what was it? Was it the 830? Yeah, a Lumia 830, which was their mid-ranger phone, and you compare that against the gross back on a Galaxy S4, you would never call them the same. Again, that distinction is useful for consumers. And then O2 Lumia, immediately after Savannah's on. I want a Lumia type of polycarb, smooth to the touch, good grip, more durable, it feels nicer, and when it gets scratched, the polycarb is that color. So, I've got a yellow Lumia 1520, and it's scratched, and it's dented, and it's chipped, and you kind of can't tell because it's still yellow all the way down. We've got a bunch of other comments in here. There was one other thing that I wanted to talk about, and it kind of went in line with Pocophone. Someone asking for megapixel shirts. Well, I don't have megapixel shirts yet. I'm looking at how that design might work on a t-shirt, but I do have these amazing megapixel beverage consuming implements. Hold on, let me just test this out here real quick. Yeah, that definitely made my tasty beverage at least 17% more delicious just by drinking it out of one of those megapixel mugs. That is a completely unverified claim, so you can't test me on it. From Aditya Anil, we don't want drama, we need megapixels and cranky Juan. I don't know. Am I going to be cranky today? I think I'm going to be a little cranky today. I think I'm going to be like just undies shifted, but not undies in a full twist. And Sean Vega Velez, BlackBerry uses the best design in the BlackBerry Key 1, Key 2. I concur. Metal sides, grippy back. It's a phone made for grown-ups. Okay, one thing, this actually is kind of is on point. It's an experience that I had over the weekend. This is a little story time, Juan. So sit in, settle in. This is a little conversation, something that happened with me. Cruising around the internet, I'm doing the social medias. I just shared a photo. Was looking through some friends' Instagram feeds, and a buddy of mine who's a super popular YouTube reviewer, just talking about what phones he was using, and made a passing comment about the BlackBerry Key 2. And of course, in mentioning the BlackBerry Key 2, you instantly get comments about how terrible the camera is. I've got my Key 2 right here. My Key 2 still has my SIM card in it. And if you hit my Instagram, I just shared a portrait mode photo of a really awesome shirt that my wife got me for my birthday. And it looks great. It looks fine. This camera is not a deal breaker. So on one of the people who asks this question, they actually ask a question. I should preface that. Instead of just saying, "Oh, camera's so terrible. This phone's too expensive for camera. It's so terrible." This guy actually asked if the camera really was a deal breaker. Well, that's a different kind of conversation. And I feel pretty well equipped to, I feel not like I'm the smartphone camera authority. I kind of am. Not that I was trying to supersede the popular tech YouTuber, but I feel like I was better equipped to actually answer that question. In my normal snarky way, I said, it's a fine mid-pack shooter. It is. It's a fine mid-pack shooter. And I went and looked at the guy who asked the question. I looked at his Instagram, and he was a very talented art photographer who focused on black and white imagery. Really high contrast, dark black and white photography. Even his daylight shots, he runs them super dark, really edgy, really contrasty. So after looking at his feed, I was like, if he wanted a BlackBerry Key 2, this camera would totally not hold him back. He's already extremely talented. He knows his way around a camera. He understands photography. In fact, there are some things about the BlackBerry Key 2 that he might benefit from, especially in the manual controls. The major bummer for him would be lack of RAW. So again, my snarky reply, it's a fine mid-pack shooter. Those people who are still trashing it probably don't know how to camera. To which, then the popular YouTuber almost immediately jumps on my comment with the, well, yeah, but this is unacceptable for a company to offer a camera this expensive when for the same price you could buy a Pixel 2. Which kind of got my back up, which kind of made me bristle. Because again, I was replying to one of his commenters, and he didn't even address that guy's question. He only tripping over himself to parrot the same kind of, the only acceptable solution at that price is a Pixel. So, I at least try and make a joke out of it and say, well, yeah, but that's like saying I'm not going to buy this truck I need because this tiny roadster is what I want, and I'm not going to buy the truck I need because this tiny roadster has a better stereo system. And then popular YouTuber replies like, well, yes, if only if we're having a conversation free of any context. And so that made me worried because, from one comment to the next, he seems to have lost the thread of our conversation. So maybe he had insta dementia. And so I reply again and I say, well, you set the context. We were talking about the BlackBerry Key 2, and you came running into this to talk about a Pixel. And that's when he got really defensive. The popular YouTuber got really defensive and started saying, well, yeah, because, you said this and the price on this phone is this. And so, if you were going to buy a camera, well, then obviously this would be the superior choice. And that really made me frustrated because we don't buy a phone just for the camera. If this photographer in the Instagram comments really was interested in a BlackBerry Key 2, the camera would not have held him back. A really talented art photography, black and white photographer. And I knew for a fact that popular YouTuber had not looked at the Instagram feed of the original commentator, of the OP. Because if you had looked at an Instagram feed full of black and white photography images, why would you recommend a Pixel? A Pixel is not special. The camera is not magic. In fact, the hardware is kind of mid-pack. It's normal, good smartphone hardware. What makes a Pixel fancy is Google's image processing software. And you can get Google's image processing software on a lot of phones. You can load an APK and get the same kind of setup. But to recommend a Pixel is you are recommending a very, very good auto mode, which likes to oversaturate and likes to do a ton of HDR processing. So why would an art photographer who focuses on black and white images get any benefit out of a phone whose software promotes unicorn barf HDR? That's entirely reductive. That is the worst piece of advice I would give for someone looking to spend $600 to $700 on a phone, especially at the tail end of the Pixel's run. So thankfully, the original commenter drops another message, and we have sort of the remaining conversation off of popular YouTuber's photo. And ultimately, I kind of recommended to him, the BlackBerry Key 2 won't hold you back because I think you're a really talented photographer. But if you're shooting edgy, dark, contrasty, black and white images, you should try and test drive a Huawei. And he was like, oh, yeah, but the EMUI is so terrible and everyone doesn't like this in the software. And you're like, yeah, but you got to pick your poison. You can get a phone that doesn't help you and fights you for the style of photography that you enjoy, or you can get a phone that actually embraces monochrome photography and super contrasty photography, and that would probably be a better purchase for you. So from Blue Mylicious, Unicorn Barf must be your next mug t-shirt, surely. I need to do a Unicorn Barf mug. I will start designing and drafting. You will see it on Patreon, hopefully next month. But I just wanted to share that anecdote because this continuously runs into the situation I've been having with sort of predetermined winners and what's going to do well for me in SEO. If I put out a video that praises the BlackBerry, it's going to get savaged by OnePlus and Pixel fans. But if I put out a video that the title's super critical of the BlackBerry, then everyone's going to rush to have their preconceived ideas of the BlackBerry confirmed. This was popular YouTuber saying he was going to be using the BlackBerry Key 2 as a travel device and still couldn't get over this hurdle of I must maintain the commentary of how terrible the camera is. And you're like, that's not a valuable commentary for the state of our consumer electronics. So it was just pretty frustrating to encounter that yet again from someone who really should know better. So there's Cranky Juan. Let's get into some news. Just to reiterate, I do have a 19-minute camera review of the BlackBerry Key 2. So if you want to know, like actually know, not just guess or parrot the preconceived failure points of other YouTubers, you can actually see a ton, 20 minutes, 19 minutes of photo and video samples from the BlackBerry Key 2 so that you yourself can see the strengths and weaknesses of this supposedly terrible camera, which I seem to be getting phenomenal results out of because I guess I'm just way super better at camera-ing than a lot of other YouTubers are. Spoiler for anyone who might be watching my P20 Pro camera review. It's such a tiny data point, but the BlackBerry Key 2 is remarkably better at panorama shots than the P20 Pro. So if I were like every other YouTuber out there who only judges cameras by like one data point, you know, how does the auto mode work? Oh, it doesn't have unicorn barf color. Then you could make the argument that the P20 Pro camera is garbage and the BlackBerry Key 2 is the best camera of all time because of the panorama performance. So I'm just saying, if we were going to be making reductive assertions about smartphone cameras, then one could. I mean, I wouldn't do that to you. I'm classier than that, but one could make that claim that the P20 Pro is an inferior camera to the BlackBerry Key 2. Okay. From LGH Dotma 1, have you gotten your hands on the XZ2 Premium yet? I have been talking to Sony PR. I'm trying to maybe work out a deal with an importer. It would be ridiculous if I had to import an XZ2 Premium. It is my mission to review any Xperia by the end of the year. Sony makes that very difficult to do. I want to showcase a Sony actually before I get my hands on a Samsung. But we'll have to see how that plays out. So we'll see. There are a bunch of comments here. I'm going to have to, let's jump into some news because this is already going to be a long podcast. I can feel it already. So speaking of cameras and ultra large image sensors and companies that completely paved the way for mobile content creation, HMD Global now owns the PureView trademark. This is an article from NeoWin. Back in 2014, Microsoft purchased Nokia's Devices and Services division, which also included licensing the PureView brand to the Redmond giant in a deal valued at $7.3 billion. The iconic PureView camera tech was used in numerous high-end devices, including the 41-megapixel Nokia 808 and Lumia 1020, the 1520, the 920, and later the 950 and the 950 XL. So basically, none of the technology has changed. Just HMD now has the label back. So the cameras aren't going to be better. They're just going to have a new label. Or an old label, excuse me. They're going to have the PureView label back on them. I really hope that this means HMD is investing in something groundbreaking, though, because the whole point of that PureView brand, it wasn't one kind of tech. It wasn't one special thing. It was a combination of different technologies that delineated that camera from its smartphone peers. So if you had a mid-ranger phone like a Lumia 830, PureView represented a combination of pixel binning zoom and optical image stabilization. If you had the Lumia 1020, you had an ultra-large, super high-resolution, super pixel-dense sensor and optical image stabilization, and it was the first time that we saw pixel cropping zoom executed that well. So those types of things mattered back in the day with those classic Lumias. So I hope that now that HMD has the PureView brand back, that their camera teams are working on something special. The P20 Pro is the spiritual successor to the Lumia 1020. It is the only other ultra-large camera sensor we've ever seen on a phone. It is significantly larger than the sensors on any other flagship phone this year. So it would be nice if we found like a true camera successor to the 1020 with a Nokia badge on it. That would be awesome. From Thomas Byers, what do you think will be the first phone to use Sony's high megapixel sensor? Probably a Sony. Maybe next year's XZ3, something like that. I'll be curious to see who licenses that sensor tech. I think Sony will probably keep that kind of close to the vest. They usually keep the first generation of their best hardware for themselves, even though their app often gets in the way of some really awesome camera hardware. From Eric Drummond, it's supposed to mean better camera optics, man. I'm sad now. Usually when you hear about this sort of thing, that means they're going to make something better. I'm tentatively positive on this move, but it's all going to come down to what does HMD slap that label on? Because again, it wasn't just optics. There were PureView cameras that didn't have Zeiss branding, so those types of divisions did exist, or there were Zeiss cameras that didn't have PureView branding. I might have that. Swap that, reverse it. So Zeiss was supposed to mean it had better optics. PureView was that it had newer technologies. So if an HMD phone comes out with PureView Zeiss, I will have very high expectations for the optics, the actual lens hardware, and that there's some new kind of technology or boundary pushing tech inside that phone. Those are really high bars to clear now. That's a big hurdle. So I'm anxious, but I want to give them the benefit of the doubt that the first time we see PureView back on a new Android phone, that it will have something special to offer. From Daniel Wilson with the super chat. Thank you for the work you do. Extremely inspirational. Daniel, thank you so much for your contribution, supporting the channel, and joining the discussion. I very much appreciate you being here. And for all the folks here in the live chat, this is why I like to do this podcast the way I do, because conversations are more fun than monologues. Greatly appreciated. So let's get this down here. Okay, moving on to the next story. Again, I'm kind of hyping because I put out my Huawei P20 Pro camera review. HMD got PureView back. And there are some Huawei woes that we have to contend with. Let's get this up here. So this is a tweet that Andrew Wallace, my co-host on the Geek Book Club, sent in. Whoa, another plot twist. Australia bans the use of Huawei 5G networking technology. This is a story out of Digital Trends from the first paragraph. Huawei has been banned from supplying its 5G mobile network infrastructure equipment in Australia. The government issue order said regulations that previously only applied to carriers would now apply to equipment too. In a statement, representatives said using equipment sourced from companies that could be influenced by foreign governments may leave the nation's network vulnerable to unauthorized access or interference. Later in the article, China's foreign ministry spokesman is quoted as saying Australia should not use excuses to, quote, artificially erect barriers, end quote, and that the Chinese government has expressed, quote, serious concerns. Australia has shut Huawei out of other telecommunications deals already this year, previously ending projects related to fiber optic connections and undersea cables. This is going to be a very this is going to be a very challenging story to follow over the coming years. I'm not super bullish on 5G. At least this micro cell flavor of low building penetration tech. 5G, I feel, will be an even more obnoxious marketing buzz word brand speak advertising campaign than 4G and LTE was. It's the same analogy that I've been using with family and friends. I might as well share it here. We're going to see 5G labels slapped on a bunch of devices and in a ton of carrier advertisements when we don't even really have the full prowess of LTE, 4G LTE being utilized. And any speed improvements, bandwidth improvements require an infrastructure investment in backhaul. So 5G kind of depends on you having gigabit 4G, and there aren't many areas in the United States that really lay claim to that kind of infrastructure speed improvement. So, yeah, I feel it's premature to be enacting these kinds of security-related infrastructure concerns that because we bought telecommunications equipment from China, that it might be somehow compromised and lead to bad actors from foreign states infiltrating our telecommunications network. I just haven't seen the evidence for it. And this is one of those things I really wish law enforcement agencies would at least... You obviously can't fully disclose what the major threats, concerns are, but right now we're kind of operating in a total vacuum. When they have advisories against Huawei phones and Huawei telecommunications equipment, I would hope that our markets would be asking, our major corporations would be asking, what evidence do you have that this represents a consumer risk? And that's what I haven't seen. I will be the first to say ban Huawei when I see some solid evidence that they're doing something legit shady in the telecommunications space. Right now, the competition between Huawei and Qualcomm and Ericsson and all of the other players, the whole spectrum of spectrum companies, I just don't see why Huawei would be doing something completely Chinese state-driven underhanded. It really does feel just kind of like that United States, Australia following in the United States footsteps to fight China. And that I don't think is going to be a good strategy moving forward. What do you guys think? On both counts, on both the 5G brand wars that we're about to sit through. If any company were really boosting 4G LTE, I think I'd maybe be a bit more excited about what 5G could offer. But, it's LTE really hasn't gotten many improvements in my neck of the woods. And it's far from being, it's way far from utilizing the full data processing capabilities of last year's phones. But then also, more specifically, what do you think is the right solution for competition in this telecommunication space as it pertains to China and Huawei trying to break out into other markets? This is a challenging story to follow all the threads, and I just haven't seen the proof. I want to see evidence. I don't want to just see people making unilateral moves on this. From Goran Petrovic, this Huawei ban seems more political than anything else. From Eddie 2. Eddie 2 agrees with Goran Petrovic. But even if it were just a political move, I would hope that politicians would have some kind of evidence they could point to justify this type of maneuver in the telecommunications space. So, I don't know. It's really a bummer. From Craig Bradshaw, TLDR. Craig had a couple comments up. 4G LTE isn't correctly implemented as yet, and stealing 4G infrastructure to push out 5G is not going to help. Give me quality 4G LTE signal coverage, stable coverage first, please. That's my big problem. Sorry, I was alluding to a point that I share with my family and friends, and it's the metaphor I use is you could have an amazing router. You could have a top-tier Asus ROG Strix gaming mesh router in your home. That thing has like 10 gigabit throughput, can connect everything, your printers and your network-attached storage and multiple gaming laptops, all cranking Dota 2 at crazy fast, no-lag frame rates. And you could connect that router to a 56K dial-up modem. You're not going to have fast internet just because you have a fast modem. And 5G is kind of feeling like it's just going to follow in the footsteps of 4G, where we can slap LTE labels on the same data connections we've had since 3G. You know, traveling through New Mexico, rural New Mexico, I get LTE coverage out, you know, in the boonies on I-40 as we're approaching the Arizona border. Do you think I'm getting gigabit LTE? Oh no, I'm getting like 5 megabit downloads, maybe 10 megabit downloads. We could do that on HSPA. We could do that on 3G. It's the exact same backhaul. It's the exact same data connection, but it's on an LTE radio and not a 3G radio. So it's totes betters, except it's not. This is not improvement. This is all branding. And it's another story, you know, like last week, was it? Or maybe it was the week before, talking about how the telecommunications industry is now lobbying the federal government for more money because the internet should be treated like a utility, but they don't want any of the regulations of operating as a utility. They just want all the public money. So they want the public to invest in their ability to generate a profit because they can't roll out fast internet to people in underserved communities and rural communities. They just can't. They can't do it. They can't find a way to make money on that. They need more tax dollars. Aditya Anil, is this some conspiracy against the rising Chinese manufacturer? Grabs tinfoil hat, sips coffee from mug. I don't even know that it's a conspiracy. I really wish we had more disclosure on what was happening in our telecom space, because this is a major deal. This is a major deal for how we interact with each other online, how we communicate, what devices we can use. It's frustrating. The other thing that's kind of frustrating is our next news story. It's not so much a news story as it is kind of an editorial that I wanted to share too. I've been a little disappointed with Huawei of late. I don't know if I've got it on the table in front of me. I've got a Huawei Mate 10 Pro. The Huawei Mate 10 Pro is a gorgeous phone. I gave it very positive reviews. The camera, super great. Audio, kind of miserable, but Huawei's always had kind of miserable audio. I also have a full audio review of the P20 Pro, where if you really want to see cranky audiophile Juan in rare form, the P20 Pro audio review is me maybe at my most undies twistedness. So this is from Irish Tech. I don't know what Irish Tech is, but this was on Reddit, kind of got voted up high. I wanted to kind of share my thoughts about this editorial. Anyway, this is from Irish Tech, the first paragraph. Huawei is the second largest smartphone manufacturer in the world, falling second only to Samsung, having recently overtaken Apple. They're huge in Ireland and across the globe. As a company, they have done a number of great things for both the enthusiast and the general user alike, but amidst privacy concerns, the company has started to lash out at the community which helped it, and especially its sub-brand Honor. Also a really big fan of Honor phones. I added that. That's not in the article. Not only have they begun to block users from unlocking the devices which they've paid for, they are now looking to make users return their already locked devices to their normal state, according to numerous reports on the forums of XDA developers and well-known Magisk developer Top John Woo. An OTA refers to an update which you receive over the air. Magisk is a popular root solution used, which gives a user access to the device's system files. And then he quotes John Woo's tweet, "I am informed that a new Huawei OTA will make installing Magisk unable to boot at all. At this point, I might just simply ignore this brand even exists." So, there's a video from TechAlter. This was the video that put TechAlter on my radar. An amazing YouTube producer. You should run out and subscribe to his channel as soon as I am done with this podcast, or as soon as you're done listening to this podcast. The video that really put me on his radar, and I forget the title of it now. He's so amazing, I forgot the title of his video. But he has a video about why enthusiast brands fail. And his insight is, he sums up how I felt about enthusiast tech brands far more succinctly than I could. But the general crux is, you put out a gadget of any kind, you court major mainstream techies. If it's popular with the techies, they will savage you if you ever try and pivot mainstream. If it's not popular with the techies, then you get an internet echo chamber of angry nerds that are going to go out of their way to try and make your brand fail. It's a lose-lose proposition. And then he also talks about his experiences with Oppo. So Oppo made a major pivot. Instead of trying to court higher-end, higher performance tech enthusiasts, they kind of went on a binge of how many different selfie camera phones can we produce, and they were far more successful. I want to be fair to Huawei and Honor, but I'm finding some challenges. I'm finding some difficulty with my own personal feels in how the brand has maintained relationships with North American consumers. There is kind of a feeling that if you bought a Mate 10 Pro in the United States, unlocked obviously, they had high expectations for having some kind of carrier deal with the Mate 10 Pro, and then that got squashed. And then once it got squashed, it kind of felt like those of us who had Mate 10 Pros just sort of evaporated from the company's support system, that we just disappeared, that we weren't worth even getting security patches and bug fixes and minor updates, let alone some of the major software updates that we've seen in other countries, like the GPU turbo mode. I don't have that on my Mate 10 Pro. My phone is consistently telling me I have the most up-to-date software, and there is no way that I've found to easily flash the firmware that is out there for this phone, because I'm here in the United States and I currently don't even have a SIM card in my Mate 10 Pro. So that feels almost punitive, right? That's very concerning. This move with squashing custom ROMs, I want to give Huawei the benefit of the doubt. I still like their phones. I still like their hardware. P20 Pro was a really fun phone to take for a test drive. I don't think I'd buy one. But there are some business practices here which feel like clumsy attempts to emulate the business strategy of another brand. Specifically, I'm referencing BlackBerry. As far as I know, no bounty for rooting a BlackBerry phone has ever been claimed. For the BlackBerry Priv, I believe that bounty was over $1,000. But no one was able to root the BlackBerry Priv and keep it in a state where it wasn't a brick, where it didn't become a paperweight. If your brand were being savaged internationally over potential security concerns because of your relationship with the Chinese government, again, China, it would make sense to me that you would try to pivot your brand and become more security conscious. In similar ways, when Samsung was getting hammered over security issues, they created Knox. And they made a big play to go and court business customers to make their phones as desirable as iPhones were at the time. And this is, this is going back like Galaxy S5, Galaxy S6, where they were really making the big push on corporate grade security for Galaxy phones. That would make sense to me that Huawei, under the same kind of scrutiny, under the same kind of backlash, would be trying to do something similar. This is the worst possible way to go about making that transition, affecting products that are already out in the ecosystem and locking them up if you try to do things like root or use custom ROMs or flash custom recoveries or anything like that. That's a problem that I can't support because the horses have already left the stable, and now you're trying. Anytime you implement an update or firmware or software which bricks the hardware because the consumer is choosing. I mean, it takes forethought. It's not like someone accidentally tripped and like, oh no, I rooted my phone. That's like serious investment in education and time and energy to root a phone, unlock the bootloader, root the phone, flash a custom recovery. I mean, you just don't happen to do that one day. This is the same criticism I have with Apple. Apple goes out of their way to make it phenomenally difficult to use even authorized repair parts in iPhones and then not brick the phone. There was all this fear, all of this FUD about, you don't want to get a non-Apple screen. If you go to an unauthorized hardware repair shop and they use a crappy screen to repair your iPhone, it's going to be terrible. So I like that they brick phones to prevent shops from doing shady things. You can take the screen so let's say you had two iPhone 8s. You could take the screen out of one, put it in the other, and that would still brick the phone because Apple was putting such a severe lock on the serial codes and the hardware for that repair. That is punitive. That is not really a security benefit for the consumer. That is, you can only do business with us and a handful of shops that we deem are worthy of doing our repairs, and most of those shops wouldn't even do the repair. Apple would just deem them worthy of receiving the phone and then allowing that repair shop to send the phone to Apple on your behalf. So that's where I'm really frustrated by this turn from Huawei. It would be one thing to say moving forward with every new phone we're going to be putting out there, we are looking at corporate grade security. Our phones will be unrootable. Our phones will be unhackable. We're going to plug up any potential security risk from Android. BlackBerry is making the exact same argument, and I celebrate BlackBerry for offering a different style of solution. You can't roll back an update on a BlackBerry. You can't root a BlackBerry. You can't get access to anything on a BlackBerry. You can't even capture a raw photo on a BlackBerry. They won't give you access to anything. It's that locked down. If Huawei wanted to do that with the Mate 20, the P21 or P30 or whatever the next P series phone is going to be called, awesome. But the fact that they're rolling back those kinds of provisions on their current phones and potentially harming consumers with bricked devices, I find completely unacceptable. That is the wrong way. You are, in essence, punishing consumers for doing things that they chose to do with the phones they bought. They own that phone. They rooted that phone. They wanted to use their phone that way. You can't walk that back now. It's too far. From Sean Huron talking about Apple, they're going to start micro laser etching serial numbers on each individual part inside iPhones. I don't even know that they need to, because the software component part of every single piece of hardware in an iPhone already knows if it's being used in the right phone. From Hadid Tamimi, Huawei's reasoning for removing it was about people bricking their phones. Seems BS to me. I'm sure there is you can actually track the numbers on the number of people who have to get some kind of warranty or support for a Huawei that they bricked because they didn't know how to flash or unlock a bootloader or flash a custom recovery. I can't believe that that is a statistically significant part of Huawei's support costs. From Steve DeRoche, not even Camera 2 API on the key phones ? No Camera 2. Any custom or any third-party camera app you use on a BlackBerry is going to have very basic controls, but you still have a pretty decent set of manual options on the BlackBerry camera app. Again, it hasn't held me back. Once you learn what the limitations are, what the issues are with the Key 2, which you can get a great sense of the pros and cons of the BlackBerry Key 2 camera by going to patreon.com/SomeGadgetGuy and checking out my 19-minute BlackBerry Key 2 camera review. No Camera 2 API. And let's get that out of the way there. Okay, so Huawei, Australia, bummer. Huawei unlocking bootloaders, stuff like that, major bummer. Let's talk about some other news here. This one's just kind of funny. Just not a good look. This is coming by way of the San Francisco gate. I should be wearing my red hat for this, my red beret comrades. Aditya Anil, hashtag Patreon promo. All right, so this is by way of the San Francisco gate. Amazon hired employees to tweet nice things about it, shows how big its reputation problems are, from the article. Amazon is trying harder than ever to combat its growing negative image. The company now has a small army of FC ambassadors, saying nice things about the company online and engaging in dialogue with average Twitter users. The ambassadors are full-time employees, according to an Amazon spokesperson, and it is their job to share their experiences working at a fulfillment center. A quick search on Twitter reveals about 13 such employee accounts, and they seem to be uniform in both their online presence and talking points. So this is all coming on the heels. I mean, however you might feel about the capitalistic structure of CEO and corporate pay versus the average pay of employees on the ground floor of a corporation, founder of Amazon, Jeff Bezos, is worth billions, while people can barely afford to make ends meet on through some of his shipping centers. This is kind of coming to a head because of Bernie Sanders. So Bernie Sanders put out a tweet and an article, a press release, talking about a bill he plans to put out where a corporation would be responsible for covering any public assistance costs of their full-time employees. This is like a major problem at like a Walmart, for example. There was like a mini documentary. I can't remember if it was a Vice or something like that, but someone basically went and got a job at a Walmart, and during the employee orientation, they were actually handed all of the state assistance forms for getting, state-funded healthcare and state-funded disability. And Walmart was basically using taxpayer dollars to subsidize their own profits. So Bernie Sanders is looking at the sort of modern day equivalent of that, a corporation like Amazon, and these other situations where we hear stories of people are working full time, working overtime, and then they're still having to go on state assistance to get basic needs covered. And I agree with that sentiment. I don't know how the execution of a policy like that should actually be implemented, but that's a conversation worth having. If you employ people full time and they can't afford basic medical coverage, and they have to go and turn to taxpayer assistance, then that corporation is not actually competing successfully. That corporation is diverting public assistance funds from people who should be using it because they're out of work, not because they're gainfully employed and employed full time. So this is the big pendulum swing back: is can Amazon mount a PR campaign to change the perception of this brand? And so Amazon PR is obviously defending Amazon. Amazon is proud to have created over 130,000 new jobs in this last year alone. These are good jobs with highly competitive pay and full benefits. One of the reasons we've been able to attract so many people to join us is that our number one priority is to ensure a positive and safe working environment. And yet people who have left fulfillment centers after their sort of non-disclosure time period is up all share very similar accounts of what it's like to work at Amazon. So it feels a little like astroturfing to me. Oh, Steve DeRoche kind of reminds me of the HTC superfans or whatever they call them, going on forums and defending the brand. If you're not familiar with the term astroturfing, John Oliver has an entire episode on it on YouTube. You can check that out. But basically, it's companies who hire people to just toe the company line, but make it feel like it's some kind of grassroots conversation. This is not a good look, for Amazon. Increasingly, I've been trying to find other solutions for shopping, buying things when I can from any other company, from any other retailer that has options for that. There was sort of a point of pride that my first retail TV gig was Newegg. I've been a lifelong Newegg customer. I feel pretty good, sharing my experiences, both positive and negative, when I've shopped on Newegg, and I seem to get better results for tech parts shopping on Newegg than I ever have while trying to shop through Amazon and dealing with the Amazon marketplace. It's just never good though when when you've got to create this like echo chamber of your own because so many people have been saying bad things about your company. Or the same thing too, like I'm so happy to shop at Costco when I can. So my wife and I, we've been making an effort to look at the purchases we would have made on Amazon and see, is there something that we could give Costco our money for a similar solution? Even if it's not exactly the product that we wanted to buy on Amazon, could we get something close enough from Costco that it would satisfy that need? And that's actually been kind of a fun shopping challenge, oh, Amazon's real easy and it's going to drop off in like 2 days, but Costco has this other thing and it's actually maybe even better, so that, not just sort of falling into the rut of search for this one thing, buy with one click, get on with my day. Now it's like challenge. Maybe it's not necessarily always about like saving money. Maybe we can even find a better solution. We found these end tables. We were just doing a little shopping. For the longest time, we've just been using folding TV dinner trays next to our couch. Super tacky, looks awful, really wobbly. Toddlers love knocking those things over. So we were shopping around, found something similar on Amazon, found something kind of like what we wanted on Amazon. And before we hit buy, it was just one of those happenstance things. We were at Costco and they had end tables which were perfect for us, like better than what we would have gotten at Amazon and about the same price. So that kind of thing, we're trying to stay more open to alternatives to always shopping with Amazon. And I think now's the right time for all consumers to be just looking at diversifying. Amazon Prime's a pretty good deal. A lot of great shows on Amazon Prime. But we shouldn't let one company be the end all be all of the entire consumer experience. From Aditya Anil, HTC Troopers? I think they were called HTC Superfans. From Ronald Collins, Bernie doesn't practice what he preaches, being a millionaire. That has nothing to do with the state. I'm sure Bernie probably goes above and beyond. So I'm sure Bernie pays his taxes, first of all. So he's already ahead of the curve for most corporations and other rich people. And I'd be curious to see like how he supports charities and other communities. Bernie's point isn't that we should be communists. Bernie is a social democrat. Bernie is not a democratic socialist. There's a difference there. We're actually electing democratic socialists. If you're concerned about people who are going to start talking about seizing the means of production for the population and removing any kind of structure of profit or capitalism, you should not be afraid of Bernie. Bernie is just saying he doesn't find, regulation and supporting social policies like free college and free healthcare incompatible with capitalism. That's all he's saying. If you're worried about rural, let's put on the berets, comrade, and storm the Bastille, Bernie should not be on your radar. Some of these other newcomers in the liberal space should be on your radar. The people who are legit real socialists should be on your radar. That's hilarious. Oh, he was successful, but he's also said that capitalism is compatible with, social regulations. That's that's, that's not what you should be concerned about. So, from LGH Dotma, social democracy was the norm in Europe for a long time, and the average life standard is way higher than it is in the U.S. Yeah, that's kind of the situation. Ronald Collins, no, I'm worried about my taxes tripling. Okay, be worried about that. I'm also worried about invisible purple unicorns stabbing me in the chest. I'm also worried about that. So anytime you're worried about your taxes tripling, I'll also be really worried about something that's just as likely. And if you're worried about your taxes tripling, maybe you should also be supporting initiatives to get corporations to pay their taxes. Maybe you should be going after the Panama Paper individuals who have engaged in a worldwide conspiracy to hide and extract as much wealth from their home countries as they can to not pay their share of the social burden of maintaining a government. Maybe you should be more concerned about that than Bernie Sanders saying, hey, it would be neat if Amazon didn't make their employees go on public assistance for their healthcare. I'm just saying. Sean Vega Velez, too many people want to label Bernie a communist because they don't like his views. Well, I mean, that's a go-to operating tactic for the GOP. He said Medicare for all. He's a socialist. Oh, boogeyman. And it doesn't really add up. James W., most of your taxes go to subsidizing the military and corporations. Yeah, we're fine with socialism for rich people in the United States. We're fine giving them $1.5 trillion tax breaks. We're fine with the banking industry cratering and kicking people out of their homes and defaulting on mortgages. We're fine giving them money, but then privatizing all of their profits and not loaning money to people about that. So it's super sweet. Brett Carlton, tax rates in Europe are not triple the U.S. tax rate. Maybe some Scandinavian countries, but I doubt it. So no, I do believe there are a handful of Scandinavian countries where your tax rate on paper looks like it's close to double what you would pay here in the United States between state and federal taxes. So again, if you live in a state that doesn't have state taxes, well, thank you. You're welcome. I'm going to pull a Moana here. You're welcome, because often those states are subsidized by federal dollars that come from states like California and New York. So already you're socialists anyway. Statistically speaking, higher than average likelihood that a red state is receiving more money than it actually pays to the federal government on the backs of blue states like mine. But once you factor in just the tax rate, those countries, you don't pay for college. You don't pay for healthcare. You don't pay for a lot of other public assistance. So if you factored what, a young person today going to college and racking up tons of debt just to go to college, not being on their parents' healthcare anymore, inconsistencies in how the ACA has been defunded. We never got to that point where we could leverage the ACA against pharmaceutical companies so that we could get preferred buying and we weren't getting gouged by insurance companies. And then how all of those costs get filtered down to the consumer. I'd be willing to bet that the actual costs per month in terms of taxes in a Scandinavian country versus taxes, healthcare, insurance, college, loans, and debt in the United States probably still weighs in factor of the Scandinavian countries, especially as it pertains to quality of life. But I digress. Craig Bradshaw, I'd pay more taxes for that. Not only that, I just want my tax. I want a better return on my investment. If I'm paying taxes, California is paying money to the federal government. I want those red states to have some kind of restrictions or some type of criteria on how they spend those federal dollars. And I want that money going to healthcare and education. That's what I want. I don't want that money going to pork barrel military projects that even the military doesn't want, like tanks we can't use. That to me doesn't move the needle on the public assistance that you're already getting in a socialistic fashion in this sort of political climate. From Sherrill, that is your next t-shirt, Juan, but I digress. Oh, and Mr. Robot says hello. I need to catch up. I'm still behind on even the last season of Mr. Robot. So anyway, we got a couple other things to talk about here. This one was sent in by a number of people, but Goran Petrovic was the first. And the woes facing Android apps in the marketplace as related to Fortnite developer Epic. There has been much gnashing of teeth and no small amount of schadenfreude about how this strategy has gone down. The short recap, Fortnite is not going to be in the Google Play Store. The developer is putting out their own installer. And of course, one of the first major concerns everybody was talking about was how do you buffer that installer against bad actors in the place you want to use it as a way to deliver malware. And apparently, the very first version of that installer did have a problem where bad actors could use it as a way to inject malware. So this is from, I actually have two stories that I'm going to link. One is from Android Central, the other is from Mashable. But Goran Petrovic sent me the Mashable story. And from the first couple paragraphs, Google essentially got slapped in the face when Epic Games, the developer of the super popular Fortnite, decided not to make the game available through the Play Store, but via its own app. Google warned Epic that doing so could potentially put Android users at greater security risk, but the game developer brushed it off, insisting on going it alone for several reasons, including not having to give Google a cut of in-app revenue and embracing open platforms. Well, now the worst has happened. Despite having no obligation to do so, Google recently discovered an exploit within the Fortnite installer app that allowed malicious apps installed on one's Android phone to hijack the download process so that instead of downloading the game from Epic's server, it could download and install something entirely different, which could potentially leave the device open to attacks. So this article goes on to do a really good job of accounting the back and forth squabbles between Epic and between Google. So day one, this installer goes out. Within, I want to say within 48 hours, Google had already found and identified the potential exploit, communicated that with Epic, and Epic, I think, patched it in another 48 hours. I think the max time you would have been vulnerable to this type of exploit was less than 4 days. I mean, that's a long time, but it really wasn't a widely known exploit. Google had found it. That wasn't open or public. There were probably also a number of small players that were hacking into stuff like that to see if they could find exploits and knew about it. But again, that window, 3 to 4 days, that's not bad for finding a bug, reporting it, the developer getting on board, and patching that exploit. Google and Epic are feuding now because Epic developers requested Google stay the public disclosure of this bug for 90 days so that they could make sure installers out there were fixed, that anyone who was affected by this would have, updated software, would have, again, the security through obfuscation. Google almost immediately disclosed that bug in a very aggressive fashion, and they completely ignored the request from Epic to wait 90 days. So then Epic is claiming that Google is actually putting more consumers at risk because of this disclosure. That now anyone who wants to try and utilize this exploit will be more aware of its existence, and that puts way more pressure on Epic to get the consumer education out there, make sure everyone's patched up and everything's fixed. I kind of feel like both companies look bad in this situation. I kind of feel like neither company really looks good. It really does feel to me like Google is being punitive, that they are again, they're feeding into a conversation of fear, uncertainty, and doubt as it pertains to a competitor of the Google Play App Store. I actually do agree with the sentiment from Epic that we should be looking at open standards and then also open platforms. if a company wants to have a different criteria for the types of apps and services that they sell on their platform, and they don't want to have to go through Google as the only gatekeeper to 80% of the smartphone market, then we should have options that we can shop outside of the Google Play Store. But again, it's Epic, and they've gone about this in the worst way possible, and they've also confirmed the fear, uncertainty, and doubt that Google is spreading, that their first installer actually did have this major security flaw. I just had a story about Amazon, but I still have a pretty healthy collection of Amazon apps that I don't install the Amazon App Store anymore. Back in like the Froyo days on Android, what was that? Android 4 or 5, somewhere in there. I used to do the free app of the day every day religiously. I'd buy like special app sales and app packs and games and different utilities, but it kind of just got to be a bit too much to keep up with. Running updates through the Amazon App Store. The Amazon App Store was not as well laid out. It was slower. It was flakier. It crashed more often on my Android phones. But if I were to ever pick up like a Fire tablet, I have a ton of apps that I can go about installing there. So, you know what? The other example would be something like Humble Bundle. Humble Bundle is one of my affiliate partners. I really like my monthly bundle. You get a lot of really awesome, cool games. When I gave away a copy of Forged Battalion, it was because I had gotten another Steam key for that. But the Humble Bundle has its own Android game center. So you install the Humble Bundle app, and then when you get Android games through the Humble Bundle, they get updated just like they would in Google Play, but through that app instead. I do believe there is an argument to be made for having other resources where people could buy software. I would love to see a Steam store that worked on Android. Humble Bundle works great on Android. Amazon, as much as I'm cranky about Amazon, they are another resource for you to buy software that runs on an Android device. So from Ellis to I worship the free app of the day. Sherelle, you're going to have to get over me, shamelessly plugging everything that I do. I don't know if you know this these days, but YouTube ain't getting the bills paid. So, we got to eat. I got to keep a roof over my family's head. And there's a full list of my partnerships and affiliates on SomeGadgetGuy.com. Click on support, and you'll see all the ways that you can buy cool stuff and also support production on this channel. But getting back to here, I don't think Epic is wrong. I just think they were jerks about it. Getting back to Google, they're not wrong. They've got to protect Android, but I think they were jerks about it. And unfortunately, I think this just goes hand in hand with reinforcing for a lot of consumers out there when this kind of noise, when this kind of problem arrives, why maybe you should just go with Apple. If you want the walled garden security through obfuscation, security through obscurity, get an iPhone. Do the App Store. You're safer that way. I mean, we'll ignore all the times that apps with malware have infiltrated, the Apple App Store too. But because Apple doesn't have this, ability to sideload apps like you can the APKs in Android, we'll just pretend like that's safer and then that's better. So yeah, that's the game. From a DTNL, we respect the seamless transitions font. Plug that megapickle mug. From Sharil Abdul Rahman. So Google and Epic are circling jerks. It really is. I mean, I'm sorry for the tasteless description, but this is like a developer negative FUD app circle jerk. It really is. No one comes out looking good from this. From Mr. Robot, Fuchsia is under development of Google. Oh, so no, Mr. Robot on point. So this is exactly the situation that I find. We've been making jokes about it. We've been having these little pithy criticisms. Oh, well, the Pixel to the Pixel 2 looks like Google's trying to be more like Apple. Yeah, they really are. I really think that the next generation operating system, which ties Chrome OS and Android OS together, this Project Fuchsia that Google's been working on, will very much more resemble the iOS landscape. Way less ability to root, to customize, to get into the underpinnings of the software. It'll probably end up being something of a statement on a like Windows Phone. You know, Windows Phone was still fairly customizable from a live tile perspective, but that was as locked down as iOS was for a lot of those hackers out there. I really think that's the direction Google's gonna go. From Elliot, from Ellis2, we are all jerks. I don't know that I'd call myself a jerk, but I will definitely wear cranky as a proud badge of honor. But the other thing about Fuchsia was that would be getting them away from some of their issues with different lawsuits, right? If you control the kernel, control the code, control the app development, soup to nuts, then it's also just a better business maneuver than the current state that Android finds itself in. And Google is trying to rein in Android, right? A lot of their most recent changes, even something like Project Treble, which should be a consumer benefit, is also being leveraged against manufacturers to prevent them from doing things that Google doesn't want them to do with Android. So those types of changes, I think we're going to be seeing more of. I think the landscape is going to get more restrictive over the next couple generations of devices. From Brett Carlton, we need a real gaming phone with a crazy SLI GPU setup and get Steam. Oh man. You know, it's the frustrating thing that Microsoft still keeps showing potential. Windows 10 on ARM, some kind of, I forget what the Microsoft concept is. There's some fancy code word for something that Microsoft is also going to be doing, which if you have an always-on Windows 10 device that's LTE enabled, why couldn't it be a phone? And then you could plug it into a monitor to get a computer or a desktop or a laptop or something like that. You know, I really think it would be awesome if we could get to that point where you just have the phone as your brain of your computing life, and then you just plug it into a special cradle, and that cradle has, an AMD Threadripper and, dual graphics cards and a ton of super fast storage, and it just offloads a part of the operating system to that hardware, and you can get your work done. Then you pick your phone up and you can put it into a laptop cradle, same thing. And you'd have one operating system that follows you everywhere. And I think Microsoft still has the best chance at that. It's just I doubt very much that they'll realize that potential. A lot of bad jerk jokes in the chat right now. NVIDIA made Tegra SoC before they could make a crazy mobile gaming platform. Microsoft Continuum. Andromeda. Aditya and Nil. Thank you. Andromeda is their code word on the Microsoft side, which, again, it looks like it's going to be exactly the same thing as Fuchsia in terms of bridging a flexible operating system that bridges phones and tablets and desktops and laptops, but with more control and implementation over each individual usage scenario. So I think that's what we're in line for. And especially when you see Continuum, Dex, Huawei's implementation of a desktop mode from the Mate 10 Pro, I think we're there. I think we could make a good faith argument for the phone already being the core computer for an individual. On a Mate 10, it's pretty easy to edit and render 4K video from the phone while plugging it into a desktop monitor. And, I have a little Bluetooth keyboard and mouse. It works pretty well. Like, we're there. We could make this happen. Now, if I could get that with Windows 10, where the phone was sort of live tile-y when I wanted it to be, and then like full Windows PC when I wanted it to be, that would just be another huge step in the right direction. So Epic, Google, whoever wins, we all lose. We had I just want to touch on this real fast because it's just a funny little story. All 5 people who are affected by this probably already know about it. Google France shuts down its Google Plus page and asks users to follow it on Twitter and Facebook instead. It's like the real end for Google Plus. I am so frustrated because I loved Google Plus before they tried to combine Google Plus and YouTube comments. Google Plus was amazing. I quickly grew, like, I think I had at one point 40,000 followers, 30,000 followers on Google Plus in those opening months. Great interactions, amazing communities for photographers, for content creators. It was the anti-Facebook in the best ways possible. And every move that Google made in trying to quickly boost the usership, the following on Google Plus, was just a kick in the nuts to everyone who was using it. Everything that they did was just terrible. So it's just the frustration of having really liked this platform, and now I barely use it ever. The frustration of seeing that this was an amazing community with so much potential, and that now even the Google France G Plus page is shutting down, saying, just follow us on Twitter, is just so sad. So I would expect more of these announcements to be coming shortly. Probably other niche Google pages, but Google France had 470,000 followers on its Google Plus page, which for Google Plus is not terrible. So to lose out on that, bummer, a real bummer. Google could have done something special here, and they totally dropped the ball on it. So I got a super chat from Marius Garan. We're going to take a quick second to take a look at this. Okay, question, and weigh in on this, podcast watchers. Hi, Juan. What smartphone would you buy for yourself? A OnePlus 6, a Note 9, a P20 Pro, iPhone 8, Poco phone, or something else? I highly value your opinion. I am super torn on that because as a gadget reviewer, I get the benefit, I have the privilege of often being able to carry two phones at the same time. And like my wife, there is a very practical reason for having sort of a work phone and then a personal phone. And I'm a huge advocate of this, even for people who aren't tech reviewers. Have a weekender, a burner phone, get like a Project Fi SIM card, something like that, so that you can separate yourself from your glowing rectangle, what I look for to get stressed out at. You could have your glowing rectangle for what I look at to communicate with family and friends and feel good about myself again. So I like having two. In a two-device strategy, that's really easy to pick and choose the best pieces of two different phones that complement each other and fill in their gaps. If I were spending, oh man, that's tough. I'm going to be stuck on a desert island. No, that doesn't work because I need to be able to communicate with people. Okay. I'm spending my own money. I can only buy one phone right now. I can't go with the OnePlus 6 because I do like to use HDMI out, and it really bugs me the way that the OnePlus 6 handles USB connections. Everything else about that phone is pretty solid. I can't go Note 9 because it's too expensive for me. That's a bridge too far for what I like to use in a phone. I'm definitely not going to go iPhone 8 just because there are too many little things about iOS that get in the way of how I like to get my work done. P20 Pro, I probably wouldn't do. Again, if you check out my P20 Pro camera review, some very clear, both the camera review and the audio review, some very clear points as to why I wouldn't do that. Of the phones that are currently out in 2018, brand new hardware, brand new software, I think I would go LG G7. It is my assertion, IMO, that the LG G7 is the most complete all-rounder phone that actually has a few specialist points in its favor. Best for audio, both speaker tech and headphone audio. It's got the most flexible camera arrangement. It's got a good screen. It's an LCD, but the quad pixel LCD definitely bridges the deficits when you compare it against a really juicy AMOLED, especially outdoors. Like the ultra bright mode, super great. Qualcomm 845, decent amount of storage. I'm not really overly hamstrung by 4 gigabytes of RAM. That might be a deal breaker for some people. Battery life is a little concerning, but I do like the quick charge and the wireless charging aspects of it, and it's been water resistant since the G6. I think LG's been on a good track for that. I think that's the one I would go. I think I would go LG G7. But again, that's also because I have very specific concerns in being able to create content on the go, and I will not suffer a phone which has terrible headphone audio. I have way too many nice pairs of headphones that I need to power appropriately, and then I would have to get into a 2-device strategy anyway. If I had a OnePlus 6 or especially a P20, I would have to carry a dedicated music player anyway. So, Marius, thank you very much for the super chat. I absolutely appreciate the support on this channel, and that was a fun question to dig into. What do you guys think? What has been the winner or the loser of your phone strategy for 2018? There's a lot of refinement. This has been a tough year for people who want the most exciting, groundbreaking, bleeding edge tech in their phones. This has been a very quiet and comfortable year for just polishing up some of the rough edges on our phones. From LGH Dotma, what is important for Marius Garan? Versus the OnePlus 6, I like the Sony Xperia XZ2 better, but it's as expensive as it's as expensive as the OnePlus 6 and has dual front-facing speakers and IP65 and 68 and better battery life and a better camera. So again, it's always tricky to untangle what phone should I buy. Here's a list of phones. When it kind of goes back to that anecdote I shared at the beginning of the podcast. If someone came to you asking about smartphone cameras and they were into black and white photography, would you recommend a phone that's all about auto HDR, super saturated software? It's that one little data point of what is it that you really value in a phone? And that's why I always have to preface those things. The reason why I like the G7 is very specific. One, I'm a hardware over software guy, because we can all admit LG, not the best when it comes to software, definitely not the best when it comes to software updates. I still don't have the 4K at 60 frames per second update on my LG G7. That's making me very cranky. But I still like what they're doing with hardware better than their competitors right now. So I'm willing to make compromises in one area to get things like the absolute ultimate, no questions, objective best audio experience on a smartphone. I want that. I want that more than I want updates for Android. From Steve Desrochers, the LG G7 won't let you use the HDMI out. Also, that's right. But the G7 comes with all of those other benefits that I mentioned that aren't on the OnePlus 6, including enhanced water resistance, the dual camera for an ultra-wide sensor, the amazing headphone performance versus the slightly less good OnePlus 6 headphone performance over the OnePlus 5T, and numerous other advantages that I've already detailed. A lot of people saying, go Poco phone! No, this is just it. It's like, as I get older, I'm kind of getting this way, I want a sedan that's really comfortable. I'm a little less concerned with having the fastest, little roadster that I can have. And I'm kind of getting that way with phones. There are a lot of perks that I like on flagship phones. I can't bring myself to spend $1,000 on a Note because I'm not really into S Pen as much as I used to be. Although picking up the Note 4, I did a look back at the Note 4 camera on my personal YouTube channel. Kind of got me back into like, I missed, this S Pen thing. But it was, I can't pull the trigger on it at $1,000. When that phone drops in price a little bit, then it would become a more compelling option for me. But there are so many things that I like about other experiences in the smartphone ecosystem. Dex is super cool, but I wouldn't necessarily be held back tremendously if I had a V40 that could do all of the things that the G7 can do and then give me a proper HDMI out. So that's again, it's like, you also want to play the waiting game as long as you can. What will I get if I hold out for just like another week? So anyway, From Shivanazan, the list only shows high-end mobile. Sadly, my Moto G6 isn't there. Oh, the Moto G6 is so great. Sean Vega Velez, I'd go BlackBerry Key 2 because I have to be productive during my day. Plus, it's built like a brick house. From Fat Produce, I want LG to put a 4,000 milliamp hour capacity battery in their flagships. Amen, brother. I will accept a big little strategy. Like a G7 and a V40 are really just sibling phones, and that the V is going to have the bigger battery. I'd be fine with that. I'm okay with them having an option with a smaller battery. It's still bigger than the battery that's in the Pixel 2. So yeah, that would be okay. It's just I want to see, like what Huawei does with the Mate, what Samsung has done with the Note. I want to see a V that's off the rails better if you're going to say that it's a different solution for more hardcore smartphone users out there. Lots of other... From Ellis2, replying to Goran Petrovic, can't live without the S Pen. Ronald Sims, as long as it can multitask. From Paco Street, the LG G6 is great for brand new devices at about £300. Sorry, definitely has less hardware defects than the Galaxy S series, like the purple banding. So lots of, and that would also be another part of the commentary. The only reason I'm replying there, because honestly, there are still some reasons why I would go with a V30, not the V35, but the V30 over my LG G7, not the least of which is the ability to switch lenses while shooting video. But again, we're also in that part of the conversation where we kind of have to focus on year to year. We could have a whole debate on, would you buy a mid-ranger or premium mid-range phone or last year's flagship? Or would you buy, like a Moto G series, or would you buy like last year's Moto Z? So those types of things become difficult conversations to untangle, why it's even more critical that you're honest with yourself, not just about what things you want, but what compromises you can live with. Hold on. There were a couple other questions here. Let's see. From Johannes, any suggestions for improving the headphone audio output on the OnePlus 6? Will the Razer phone dongle work on it, or shall I go for a Hi-Fi Me DAC with a Saber DAC? I am actually, spoiler alert, I just got a Razer dongle. So I will be producing a video very soon about my experiences using the Razer dongle on a variety of other phones. So Johannes, I'm going to have to table your question there, but stay tuned. All right, so we got a quick, I want to do one quick Patreon comment that I got that I thought was kind of interesting, and then we're going to blitz through some net neutrality news. Every week I should just do an end block of net neutrality news. But this is a comment I got from Eddie on my Patreon campaign, patreon.com/SomeGadgetGuy. Samsung's Android update problem. With the recent reveal of the Note 9, Samsung is really turning heads with its new features. But as I was watching the unveiling, there was not one mention of any update to the newly released Android Pie. I guess what I'm trying to ask, why should Samsung charge $1,000 to $1,250 for a device that ships with software a year old with no promise to its consumers about updates? And Renato replies, before a new version of Android is released, all certified OEMs and vendors are aware of the plans that Google has for their new OS, like new APIs, restrictions, etc., and they have exclusive access to the code. At this time, it might still be too early for the OEM to start building their own set of features, but they can plan it based on what Google will roll out. When Google begins the developer preview, codes roll out, the base is good enough to start parallel development. I mean, we saw like 5 months ago an EMUI 8 build running on two of Android P, so on top of Android P. So Huawei started adopting the new framework, and I suppose they went on with changes to EMUI, as an example. And we saw at launch that the Essential phone had a build of Android P ready to go. I've been considering flashing the developer preview to Android P on my OnePlus, but I kind of want to wait for just the official real consumer-facing release. This has been one of the most frustrating aspects of this conversation. Everyone has different criteria by which they judge a premium product. I mean, look at my last question, just talking about what compromises I'm willing to live with, and I'm willing to live with some pretty significant software compromises to get the hardware that I want. I completely acknowledge that a lot of people are going to disagree with me there, and that, this is why the Pixel becomes such a compelling solution for owning a smartphone, is getting your updates directly from Google, unless you're on Verizon. We're going to talk about Verizon in just a little bit too. If what you care about is having that up-to-date, as fast as possible software patches, bug fixes, security patches, full operating system and improvements and installations, OTAs, then very few companies are going to do it for you. It's going to be Google and Apple. That's the game. You're not paying $1,000 for Google stuff when you buy a Note. Samsung, I don't think Samsung considers themselves to be an Android manufacturer. I think Samsung looks at themselves as a Galaxy infrastructure company. Android runs under their Galaxy phones, but they are Galaxy phones. They have Samsung's UX, formerly TouchWiz, running on top. They have a whole slew of services which run in the background that promote a Samsung experience with Samsung software and Samsung services. The Note is a perfect example of that, where Samsung created their own solutions for fine point touch control with a Wacom digitizer and additional controls in the S Pen. They still have EdgeSense. So again, that's another layer on top of the Android UI to customize the look and the feel of that phone. That's also one of the reasons why Notes typically don't benchmark as fast as, say, a OnePlus 6. A OnePlus 6 is almost half the price of a Note, but it's going to demolish the Note in a lot of those number-generating scores getting synthetic benchmarks. In fact, even in some of my real-world tests, I'd be willing to bet very good money that the Note will not perform as well as a OnePlus 6. But you're not paying for that with the Note. You're paying for DeX, and you're paying for S Pen, and you're paying for Samsung services. You're also paying for Samsung's partnerships, where, when you fire up a Note, it's going to ask you what music streaming service you want to sign on to. Wink, wink, nudge, nudge, you want Spotify, because they now have a partnership with Spotify as being their official music partnership. Fortnite, that co-branding exercise costs money. So that's what we're looking at with a Note. I don't think Samsung has any burning desire. I think it's pretty clear they don't have any burning desire or strategy to make sure that the Android part of their devices are always at the bleeding edge software update, security patch update, because they feel that they've already found solutions around that. Samsung Knox probably gets you around a lot of Android's vulnerabilities. Not all of them, obviously. You still need to get security updates from Google. But they are making the argument that Samsung software, Samsung services on Samsung hardware, regardless of Android running underneath, is what you're paying for. A lot of people are going to disagree with that. I don't know that I disagree with it, but I just feel like that's a conversation that needs to be aired out more often. There's Android, and then there's everyone else. And everyone else might be using Android, but they're using Android to their own ends. So, from LGH Dotma, OneDrive, Samsung users get extra drive space. I love reviewing Samsung phones so that I can get a little bump to my OneDrive. But don't forget, they have a Microsoft partnership. You can go and buy Samsung phones from Microsoft stores, and they're preloaded with Microsoft apps and services. Again, co-branding exercises like that between Samsung and Microsoft, that costs money. And they're making an argument that you can get away from the Google infrastructure, from Google services, by making this phone purchase. And some people will agree with that. I use OneDrive. I don't use Google Drive. I use Microsoft Office because I need to use Microsoft Office for compatibility issues. But Google Docs is fine. I think it works well. It's not that I have anything against it. It's just we're a OneDrive, Microsoft Office household. So that's what we use. From Ronald Collins, I have an Office 365 personal account, 1 terabyte on the OneDrive. For the same cost of 1 terabyte of storage on like Dropbox, you get Microsoft Office and several user accounts. It's like $100 a year, and I have 3 user accounts that each have a terabyte of storage, and I still have 2 open user accounts that maybe I should give it away. No, I'm not going to give that away. But that's a great buy. You know, that's a much better buy than just buying, you know, iCloud. iCloud is terrible. From Asif Alai, Huawei EMUI is better. I think EMUI is more efficient. I think that it does a better job of garbage collection and keeping the phone running smooth. I still do run into a little Samsung jank, even on newer Samsung phones. From Tech Leathercraft, but the S7 Edge has security update to July of 2018, so it's being kept updated. It's not that we have issues with Samsung phones never getting updates. It's that they're really cagey about when phones get updates, and it takes them a long time to roll out major updates. So if you're buying a $1,000 phone, like for example, if you bought a $1,500 laptop and Microsoft put out a major creators update to Windows 10, but the manufacturer of your laptop decided to wait 8 months before they put out that same update, you would be really frustrated by that. So I can completely appreciate the frustration of people in the phone fan space who feel the same. I'm going to spend $1,000 on a phone. $1,000 on a phone with no communication from the manufacturer as to when it's going to receive the most up-to-date operating system that the software developer has put out for it, that Google has put out for it in this ecosystem. That kind of unknown is very troubling to a lot of consumers, and I completely appreciate why. Let's get this out of the way here. And from Ellis2, I don't get Project Trouble getting supported, and it's still being delayed on those 2018 Galaxies. Project Trouble is a whole messy infrastructure of Google trying to leverage developers and manufacturers to get results that it wants for the Android space. I'm going to have to save that for a whole other conversation, for a whole other discussion, because there are some significant pros for the consumers, but I do understand why there are some troubling aspects of Google's relationship with manufacturers to the same token. Oh, Fat Produce! Doing the super chat. What's up, Andrew? Thanks, man. I have to say I am super proud of our community here. Oh, let me try this again. I'm going to read your comment correctly. I have to say I am super proud our community here is the best on YouTube. Everyone here is super respectful, and I have made genuine friends on here. Andrew, I would not be continuing to be doing these long-form podcasts, these videos, these discussions, if it weren't for an amazing group of core supporters in the comments, sharing videos, stuff like that. You have been a major aspect of that too. So I thank you for bringing nuanced discussion and civility to discourse. And I feel like we can all aspire to be better, even when we're being cranky. We can all aspire to be a more open community. That way we can lead the way on very challenging topics and discussions. So I want to blitz through... I'm going to drink a little coffee here real quick because my voice is starting to go. Apologies. I mean, that was another Mega Pickle plug. But I've got a quartet of links that I'm going to put under this video when it's done processing. Net neutrality news, Verizon news, and it's a lot to unpack. I saved it for the end because I was hoping to have a little bit more of a block, but I don't want this to be a 3-hour podcast. Let me go into screen share one more time so that we can kind of chew through this real quick. Excuse me. So a pair of stories from Ars Technica. Verizon was caught throttling the fire department's, quote, unlimited data during the California wildfires. So a lot of news outlets posted this story, but then put a little tag at the end of it saying, oh, once this story reached critical mass, Verizon lifted the throttling on the firefighters, which was technically correct. And this is an example of when technically correct is not the best kind of correct for Futurama fans. So Verizon didn't lift the throttling on California firefighters. California firefighters had to pay significantly more. They had to double their bill to go to a metered data connection, a pay per gigabyte data connection, to get Verizon to lift the throttling off of firefighter phones. I got into some arguments with people on Reddit talking about how this wasn't, in my opinion, this is a net neutrality story. But a lot of people saying, oh, well, we still had metered plans when net neutrality was in place, so nothing's changed, which is a BS argument to make. If you're making that argument, you are making that argument out of abject ignorance, because that's not how regulatory policy is enacted. Net neutrality was pushed through in the last year of Obama's presidency, and a lot of the provisions that actually would have protected consumers never really had a chance to operate out in the wild. They would have only set the stage to eventually combat things like carriers that call their data plans unlimited, but then put significant throttling restrictions on LTE. So you get all of the 2G data speed you can eat, but once you use a certain allotment of LTE data, we're going to cap that data. There are some FTC concerns in there. There should be some FCC concerns in there. But this is a perfect example of where we're going with this discussion over giving companies like Verizon basically carte blanche to control the internet in the way that will be most profitable for them. Don't forget, last week we talked about on the podcast that ISPs and cell phone carriers are asking for more public money, more taxpayer money to improve their infrastructure. But they don't want any regulations because the internet is like a utility, but we still want to be able to profit to the extreme at the expense of people who are too poor to really afford us to go in there and improve their services. This is a perfect example of where net neutrality could have started to improve the situation for things like first responders. Net neutrality, as it went up in the open internet order that was passed in the last year of Obama's presidency, would not have directly addressed this exact situation. But it would have laid the groundwork. It would have laid the framework for improving the consumer relationship with an ISP. In this case, the consumer in question, the consumers, are California firefighters who are now needing to depend on Verizon's infrastructure to keep themselves safe, to coordinate rescue efforts, to fight wildfires. That's terrible. The whole point of doing some of these spectrum sales, and back when we gutted 700 megahertz and we were looking at changing TV to more of a digital infrastructure so that we could free up this air, was so that we could do things like tie rescuers and first responders together with a backbone communication service. Over the years, because of these deregulatory practices, we've basically given all of that spectrum, not all of it, a significant majority of the spectrum, to private entities, corporations. We're letting them use this air. But part of that was there was a social contract in place that they would provide benefits, they would provide services to first responders, to law enforcement, to the government. And now it would seem in our deregulatory practices, gutting net neutrality and basically letting companies like Verizon operate however they want to operate with no regulatory oversight, with no consumer protections, that this is how they're choosing to do it. And I think that that's wrong. And I would very much be interested in speaking with someone who thinks this is the way that we should be handling these types of tech situations. We have firefighters for a reason. I pay taxes to make sure that they are well supplied, that they have the equipment that they need to do their jobs. and that they're not doing dumb things with firefighters. Like in Orange County, there was an Orange County politician who was trying to front a plan that when firefighters weren't fighting fires, they should be doing other work. Like maybe we could use them to fix roads or improve our infrastructure, which is the dumbest thing ever. I don't want a firefighter who's exhausted from, like pouring asphalt to then roll up to my house if my house is on fire. You punts. I want my tax dollars going to make sure that they're as safe as they possibly can be for doing one of the most dangerous jobs on the planet. It is their job to run into burning buildings, burning forests, burning areas, and try and put out those fires and rescue people. They need not only great firefighting gear and trucks with hoses and water and axes and hatchets and bandages and ambulances, they also need to be able to communicate. They also need to be able to disseminate information quickly and efficiently within their ranks. And if Verizon's going to get in the way of that, they're ultimately charging taxpayers even more for their own sweetheart deals. So Verizon gets to profit off of a taxpayer-funded industry, firefighters, by charging them even more when we've given Verizon tax breaks, we've given them zoning breaks, we're letting them double their admin fees. Remember, they're not going to change their bill, because if they changed the price of your bill, then you would have like a class action situation where you could, sever your contract or get out of your relationship with Verizon. But they can double their admin fees to the tune of an extra $1 billion a year, and it's still not enough. It's never going to be enough. A corporation exists to extract as much wealth as it can for the benefit of a tiny minority of shareholders. Verizon will never be beholden to consumers. They will only be beholden to shareholders. And this is why we need to have some kind of reactive consumer protection regulatory agency in place. And again, I would very much like to discuss this with people who think I'm wrong, but I haven't found any good evidence to suggest that the situation is getting better through this type of faux, not real, faux libertarian policy. So, I'll try and respond to comments on this after the video publishes. Please hit me up on Twitter. I'd like to kind of have an engaged, informed debate on this, but it's really difficult when it's just, no, free market. This is not the free market. Verizon gets to benefit from significant public funds, significant public infrastructure, significant public zoning benefits, and then they still turn around and double the costs to first responders. They do not deserve to have the spectrum that they have. They don't. There should be a regulatory corrective action here, and Verizon's LTE should go towards creating a public backbone for ambulance drivers, paramedics, the military, the government, firefighters, everyone. The Park Service should get to publicly benefit from Verizon's infrastructure if this is how Verizon is going to act. From BF Floyd, whoever said firefighters need to multitask needs to lose their job. Unfortunately, Orange County is sort of the weird pocket conservative space of Southern California, and I'm sure that guy saying, I don't understand, these firefighters just get to lay around all day. We're paying them just to sit around and do nothing. I'm sure that generated a ton of erections in over 50-year-old Fox News consuming Orange County citizens who are like, yeah, bootstraps, and I don't want my money going to freeloaders. Completely missing the point. Unfortunately, that could be like a campaign slogan for someone in Orange County, and he would probably do really well with the population down there. From DBS, free markets work as long as you have a state authority supervising corporations to make sure they don't abuse their power. And even then, it often doesn't work. I write this, and I'm right-wing. DBS, I mean, like, even the labels left-wing, right-wing, there's a reason, like, in the bell curve of populations, a majority of people sort of agree on very similar points. This was the thing that I found a little troubling about the recent passing of John McCain.
I have a number of friends in my circle of family and friends who are ultra left-leaning and took that as a time to vent about the things that they didn't like about John McCain. And I appreciate that. There was a lot of policy that I disagreed with viscerally that McCain supported. Not the least of which, some of the bills that he voted against for veterans benefits, for improving the GI Bill. And I actually have to celebrate the memory of John McCain because it was his support of a bill. I believe it was called the Broadband Choice Act. I'd have to look it up. But he co-signed a bill that would have made it extremely difficult for communities and municipalities to build their own community-funded broadband initiatives. And it was called the Broadband Choice Act, when it should have been called the We're Removing Choices from Consumers for Broadband Act. And if he hadn't have done that, I don't know that I would have become as politically active as I did. He did that, and it encouraged me. It inspired me to write all of my elected officials saying this is bad. The senators in California, my local House of my local congressman at the time was Henry Waxman, who then I later learned is a pretty solid record on consumer advocacy. I miss him being in the House. He wasn't perfect. He had a lot of flaws, but his consumer protection stance were like the proto stance of like some of the more left-leaning hawks that we have in the Democratic Party today. I have to celebrate the memory of an individual like John McCain, because as much as I disagreed with a significant portion of his policy, the one thing I didn't doubt was his commitment to public service. From serving in the military, and I'm a military brat, to spending the rest of his life in politics, I feel he joined the conversation in earnest to represent a community. It was a community that I did not get along with, and it was a community that I did not see eye to eye with, and it was a community that I did not agree with. But he actually tried to contribute to the discussion on behalf of that community, of the people who supported him. That's woefully lacking in the current state of politics. I feel like those of us who are rationalists, we're not as vocal all the time. I'm pretty vocal about politics. I apologize for that. But unfortunately, the people who are trying to disrupt any kind of progress get the most headlines. I don't feel anyone in the Trump administration is earnest in their desire to be a public servant. It's not that I even disagree or agree with individual points in policy. I feel that they're bad actors who are going out of their way to co-opt government structures on behalf of wealthy individuals to make themselves wealthier. I never got that sense from John McCain. I would never have accused John McCain of that. And so if I'm going to have a political adversary, it needs to be someone like John McCain. Because at least left-leaning individuals and right-leaning individuals, we can come to a point where we will eventually agree on what the problem is, but disagree on what the solution for that problem is. But if you have bad actors who only serve to disrupt the political process, we will never agree on what the problem is, which means we'll never be able to implement any kind of solution for fixing that problem. And that's unfortunate. When we lose someone like a John McCain, we lose a very important part of the political discussion where you can reach across the aisle and eventually find a compromise. And he'll be replaced, unfortunately, probably by someone who is far less capable at representing everyone in his district and only playing the popularity game of, well, these are the people who supported me, so I'm really going to make sure I look out for them. And I'm gonna fight tooth and claw against any of them liberals. That's the danger, is that we further radicalize the bad actors in our political process. So that's unfortunate. Real quick, Firefighters, Verizon. I'm going to link this. I'm not going to spend a lot of time talking about it. But I would highly recommend going through to read not only these Ars Technica articles, But the firefighters did an AMA on Reddit, which I have up on the screen here if you're watching the live stream. We are firefighters and net neutrality experts. Verizon was caught throttling the Santa Clara Fire Department's unlimited internet connection during one of California's biggest wildfires. We're here to answer your questions about it or net neutrality in general, so ask us anything. 71,000 upvotes, 3.5 thousand, so 3,500 comments. Obviously, you shouldn't read through all of them because a lot of those comments descend into just knee-jerk, reactionary, Russian bot, everything sucks, let's be divisive, political grandstanding. But if you needed another, or if you just wanted another data point on the pros and cons, the benefits of a net neutrality style of regulation, that's a great read. I would highly recommend going through that. Like I said, once this stream is done, once I've wrapped up this podcast, I'll put links below so that you can get to that AMA efficiently. Two last quick stories that I'm also going to link. I'm not going to spend a lot of time because I kind of feel like I exhausted my net neutrality talking points, but one from the Register that I'm going to link that I really hope that you folks will read through. Mozilla accuses the FCC of abdicating its role, ignoring comments in net neutrality lawsuit. So Mozilla is suing the FCC. The Register's under headline is pretty cheeky. Legal battle number 433 over Pi's push to kill off rules. The first paragraph, Mozilla has filed its legal brief against the Federal Communications Commission, accusing the telecom's regulator of abdicating its role, ignoring public comments, and failing to understand how the internet actually works. And this is going hand in hand with an initiative from 22 states in the United States. And this is from Reuters. 22 states ask U.S. appeals court to reinstate net neutrality rules. A group of 22 state attorneys general and the District of Columbia late Monday asked the U.S. appeals court to reinstate the Obama administration's 2015 landmark net neutrality rules and reject the Trump administration's efforts to preempt states from imposing their own rules guaranteeing an open internet. I've gone off on this a number of times in previous podcasts, so I'm not going to go through the whole spiel. But again, if you're a conservative and you care about states' rights, then states being able to enact their own net neutrality rules should be something you support, especially if you care about competition, free market, industry, and the ability to improve a community through things like data and infrastructure. So, lots of net neutrality news out there, more lawsuits, all wrapped up in a crazy political climate. And I saw someone, I've already lost into the live chat, but someone posted press F to pay respects to Senator McCain. I'm going to miss him as a political adversary. It's weird for me to say that out loud because I'm not important, but there was something so interesting about McCain in his heyday. It being the Maverick. I mean, that branding was so BS, but he was such an interesting politician. One I almost always disagreed with, and yet still tremendously respected. For all the times that we've turned politicians like a Dick Gephardt or a Mitt Romney into political punchlines, I kind of miss those days. I kind of miss those days where a Mitt Romney could be, an effective political player and didn't have to pander to the worst aspects of a tiny minority of vocal bad actors in a political party. So sad days right now, but I'm seeing some hope. I'm seeing some hope that maybe we'll get through. Maybe we'll make things better. I don't know. Knock on wood. Fingers crossed. Who knows? Folks, that's going to do it for me. I got to take one more step just to make it through the end spiel here. Oh, man. I mean, that coffee is so much more delicious out of that amazing mug. From DBS, we must forever thank McCain for that humor treasure trove that is Sarah Palin. Oh, how funny is it that I want to rush because he's passed? I mean, like I don't want to speak ill of the dead, but I also want to rush to his defense. Like, well, I mean, it wasn't completely McCain. I mean, it was the GOP and the the Republicans wanted to sort of do this, and it was a branding exercise. So it wasn't all him. Yeah, Sarah Palin. I know it's bad. It was a bad look. It was not good for him, but still. And you go and look up like a Ben Garrison cartoon. And you're just like, you've gone like full fascist if you're even mocking McCain, Ben Garrison. You're terrible. This is awful. From Ellis2, the sun will shine upon us once again. Loki to Juan Carlos. And Steve DeRoche, did you announce the Pickle Mug Instagram contest winners? No, I'm going to be trying to do that. I'm probably going to do that tomorrow. There are 3 photos that I think are all deserving of Mega Pickle mugs, so I'm going to be getting those out to you guys real soon. Aditya Anil, a moment of your time to address the Notch XL leaks and this new marketing strategy from Google. I don't think it's a new marketing strategy. I think all companies have done this to some degree where you leak out little bits of information about an upcoming product. There's a pendulum swing that happens where often those leaks are about positive things, things that are going to get a community excited. I don't think people are wrong, though, that the current strategy is leak and normalize things that might be unpopular so that by the time the phone is out, all of the nerds have already talked that to death, and it further diminishes the role of tech fans in the general consumer commentary. I think a lot of companies are looking at how can you devalue the geek community. If we are going to be angry echo chambers, ranting and gnashing of teeth whenever something we don't like happens, then the companies are going to look at how to circumvent us. General consumers don't pay attention to leaks and rumors on gadgets and consumer electronics. We do. So we'll make a lot of noise about this right now, and then that noise is not going to permeate. It's not going to infect the actual product launch. And you'll also get the benefit of a number of disingenuous YouTube tech commentators who rely on SEO for these types of phones. People who hated the Notch, well, until I got my hands on this beautiful OnePlus 6. And now I think it's time that we learn to love the Notch or just accept it. I mean, I never said I hated the Notch. It's just, now that I see it on the OnePlus 6, it's not that bad, said someone who's paying more attention to their SEO than they are trying to engage in honest and consistent commentary on technology products. So I do believe that this is probably an active strategy from someone at Google to try and minimize any potential fallout from this move. And that's a bummer because it's going to work. Consumers are going to say, oh yeah, those nerds, I hate those guys. Instead of us leading the conversation on technology topics, on being educational resources for our family and friends, we're gonna die on that hill of notches and accessories and glass backs and headphone jacks, and everyone else is just gonna get over it, man. Like the iPhone did it, and now Google's doing it, and Moto did it, and HTC did it. And you just got to roll with it, man. You just got to get used to it. When there really isn't now an option to vote with our wallet. And that's what makes me upset. So even now with my family and friends, I sound like a broken record, but I am trying to express these things have been taken away from you. Spending some more time with my beloved Note 4 was a stark reminder of all the things we've lost. Removable back so you can get to the battery and easily swap a memory card or pull a SIM card. The ability to do repairs. So Trisha Hirschberger, my co-host on Newegg, busted the glass on her Note 4 back in the day, and it was like a super easy fix. You peel off the back, you unscrew a couple little things, you swap out this glass piece, put it all back together, you're good to go, everything's fine, and you can't do that now on a Note 9. I want to say, I forget who it was now, but someone just posted an article about their first drop of the Note 9, and it wasn't in a case. And there's a picture of just the rippled cracks running through the upper corner of the phone. I have dropped my Note 4 so many times, and it's never been in a case, and it's generally fine. The screen is a little more scratched up than I would otherwise want it to be. But, IR blasters, headphone jacks, these are all things we're losing. Even just the little bezels that kind of make using the phone a bit nicer for things like gaming. That's all gone now. So Aditya Anil, that was the perfect question to ask me to wrap up this podcast. I do believe, I agree with those people out there that are claiming that this is an active strategy by Google because, again, they kind of know that tech has moved on. The consumers aren't turning to us as resources anymore. And in fact, we're just those cranky nerds. We're not really allowed to sit at the cool kids table anymore because those companies are off trying to court more lifestyle dollars, not tech dollars. It becomes exceedingly clear with every smartphone generation that more and more these products really aren't made for the true tech enthusiasts. Plenty of things that we like about these newer phones, but they're not really made for us. We're just fitting into whatever the current fashion trend might be, and increasingly that trend happens so fast that there is not an opportunity for us to vote against that trend by buying something else. And you look at how quickly notches took over the screen situation. That's the game. From Elias, from LS2, the Note 8 is the first phone I'm not confident without using a case. Any glassback phone. The V30. I love my V30. The V30 is rated mil-spec 810G drop-in shock resistant. No way, it's got a glass back. This phone has never left my house without this super chunky case that I have it in today. There's no way I'd ever take that phone. And it was the same for my G6. I have my G6 within arm's reach too. Big old bumper case, screen protector. Screen protector's cracked. Screen protector's cracked because this phone took a gnarly corner drop in its case. The case protected the phone, but it's still, the impact rippled up through the screen protector and thankfully busted the screen protector and not the screen. My OnePlus 6. I have never used this phone naked. Ever. The only time this phone has been outside of one of its cases, and unfortunately I broke the sandstone case. I love the sandstone case. But the only time it's been out of its case is when I was shooting video of it for part of my review. That's it. And the instant I was done capturing that 15-second clip of me holding the phone, I had the case in my other hand so I could put the case right back on the phone. So, yeah, that's, can't do it. These things are getting way too fragile. From Steve DeRoche. But hey, you don't need a mirror to use the back camera as a front-facing camera. And from Aditya Anil, did Lex pimp out the V30 case? Yes, she did. Okay, so I'm sorry, because I'm a proud papa. I realized one morning she's just sort of hovering over my phone. I get a little nervous whenever a toddler is playing with one of my electronics. I kind of peek over and see what she's doing. And she's putting little superhero stickers on the phone. And she's doing a pretty good job of balancing. So my phone has these diagonal grip lines. And she put 2 Superman stickers on opposite sides of my fingerprint sensor, following the tracks. She's 2.5, following the tracks on this case. And then on the kickstand, so I've got a little kickstand on this V30 case. She puts 2 stickers of Black Canary on the kickstand, following the diagonal lines on the case. I'm like super proud of her. So she recently added a little rocket ship. So this used to be Hawk Girl down here at the bottom, but Hawk Girl had been stuck to 2 or 3 other things before making it to my phone case. So Hawk Girl fell off after a couple of days. But to replace that, Lex did add a rocket ship. So my V30 now has a rocket ship on the bottom of the case. And I couldn't be more proud of my daughter's decorating abilities. I really want to like get her into decoupage because I think she'd be really good at it. I think she'd have a lot of fun with it. So, folks, I think it's time to wrap all this up. We are in the last hours of our smartphone giveaway. TK Bay, Jordan Keys, and I were giving away a OnePlus 6 and an Essential phone. I actually have in my possession here on my desk, I almost spilled coffee on it from one of my Megapickle mugs, a wrapped OnePlus 6. We will be announcing that winner shortly. Like I said, we're in the last hours of wrapping up that contest. It's the international giveaway. I have a video on my channel. You can rush out, still get an entry in these last hours and minutes. And then we will announce publicly who won that contest for the Essential phone and the OnePlus 6, and then send out some kudos. And if that person doesn't reply within 48 hours, we'll pick another winner. So really excited there. Definitely check out TK Bay's channel on YouTube and Jordan Keys, two great tech commentators. I'm really excited to be working with them, and I'm hoping that we can do more collaborations for you guys in the future. Not just for giveaways, but just for tech commentary in general. And then the other little bits of housekeeping, P20 Pro camera review, P20 Pro audio review. I know the phone's been out for a little while, but this is very much the strategy I expect we'll see from the next generation Mate, the Mate 20 that's going to be coming out. If you want to see one of the most important developments in smartphone phone photography since the Lumia 1020, you can check out patreon.com/SomeGadgetGuy, where all of my new camera reviews are. If you'll pardon just the quick shameless plug here, I'm going to go back into screen share right quick. SomeGadgetGuy, there are links at the top. Support SomeGadgetGuy, or this button right here. You click on that, you'll get all of my affiliates. But just below that, there's this little link right here for camera reviews. If you click on this, you will find the SomeGadgetGuy Master Camera Review List. Now, I want you to pay attention here. I have been reviewing cameras essentially the same way from 2018 to 2017 to 2016 to 2015 to 2014 to 2013, and I kind of did some camera stuff in 2012, but in 2012, it was more just about collecting samples from cameras than it was doing the full review. If you would like to see how an LG Optimus G Pro from 2013 compares in camera quality to a OnePlus 6, you can put those two videos side by side and see similar shooting conditions, similar samples, creepy tunnels, creepy gates. I don't know that in 2013 I was doing all of the Lake Balboa stuff, so you might not see the waterfall shots and then the duck boat or swan boat shots. But it's a pretty wide open. I've been doing this for a while. I'm not going to claim I'm an expert, but I will claim I'm a specialist. So, folks, thank you so much for watching, for participating. This was such a great live chat. I really thank you all for joining this discussion, joining these conversations. I had a lot of fun this week, even with some really cranky and dour topics, and it was mostly through being able to look down below my camera and see a great Steve DeRoche, our Pantech still making phones. I have a camera review on a Pantech. Suck it. But I got to wrap this up and I got to rest my throat, because tonight we are also doing another episode of the Geek Book Club talking about Artemis, the book from Peter Weir. Peter Weir, that's not his name. The guy who wrote The Martian, Andy. I don't know, whatever his name is. Oh my goodness. Yeah, so join us tonight around 8 p.m. Pacific time, where we're going to be talking about a phenomenal science fiction book. But I got to go, guys. I'm just at the bare, I'm at the limits of what my voice can do. Thank you so much for watching, subscribing. Check out that Patreon or support my channel by that link on SomeGadgetGuy.com, all of my affiliates. Thank you so much for joining the conversation, the live chat, and those of you who are helping to spread the word on these types of videos and these types of podcasts. You'll know where I'll be next week. Another episode of the SGGQA podcast, the Monday morning tech chat show. And I hope to see you there. I hope that we can have a conversation, and I hope we can get our tech weeks started off right. Have a phenomenal week. Do a whole bunch of cool stuff. Do a whole bunch of fun stuff. Use technology in fun and interesting ways. And I will catch you all on the next podcast. Be well.